Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate that. Tony and Tracy and Courtney, appreciate you all as well. It's an honor to speak here tonight. And I want to thank everybody for coming out. Got some folks I want to introduce to you tonight. So first, my wife on the front row. Beth, would you stand up? My wife, Beth Cowan. And Beth is a physical therapist and director of rehab at NHC McMinnville. And next to Beth is my sister, Tara Cowan. Our other sister, Hannah, lives in Charleston, South Carolina, so she couldn't be here tonight, but wanted to tell you about her. And then ladies in the back, would y'all stand up? Mom, my grandmother. My mother, Pam Cowan, 1983 graduate of Cannon County High School, and my grandmother, a 19 graduate of Woodbury Central High. So Eva Tenpenny Mathis, my grandmother. Appreciate y'all coming tonight. My dad sends his best wishes. He's an over-the-road truck driver, and he is in Texas tonight, so he sends his best wishes to you. A little bit about me. I and my family live in the Center Hill community. We're raising our 2 children there. Catherine is 4, Cameron is 19 months, and it is a zoo at my house, as you all with kids know. But we're living there in Center Hill. We love it. It's a great place to live, and just having a good time with the kids there. I've been practicing law in Woodbury since 2015. That's when I started. I own my own office here in Woodbury now, and I'm here on the square 5+ days a week, sometimes 7 days, depending on the caseload. But it's just, it's been a great time to practice and build my practice, and my sister Tara practices in the office as well. So, and we're just blessed to be able to do that and to be able to try to make a difference in the community. So that's a little bit about my family. One question that I've gotten out on the trail is, Matt, what's your view of the Constitution? Right? That's a question everybody wants to know. What do you view about the Constitution, government? And I think it's a good question, so I want to address that tonight, especially in a setting such as this. My view of the Constitution is that I'm a strict constructionist when I interpret the Constitution, sometimes referred to as an originalist. So that means when we look at the Constitution, we look at Article 1, Section 8, as far as the powers of the federal government, I think it should be limited. I think the federal government should be limited in its scope. And I think when our judges look at cases, they should be limited and bound by the Constitution. And our judges shouldn't be changing the Constitution on a whim. I don't believe it's a living, breathing document. That's just my philosophy. So I think the way to change the Constitution is to do what the founders intended, amend it, right? There's a procedure to amend the Constitution. So when I say I look at the rule of law as something we should follow, something we should uphold, that springs from my constitutional view that when we look at constitutional cases, judges shouldn't just make law based on whatever their view is that day. And we're kind of seeing the court shift to a conservative court as far as the Supreme Court goes, but as we know, that changes during our lifetime, and that goes back and forth. So, that's kind of my view on the Constitution and where I stand from. I had a professor in law school, and actually she was a liberal. She said, I want you all to come up with your theory of the Constitution, and I want you to come up with a justice that you most closely align with. And thankfully, she didn't tell us, hey, you've got to believe a certain way. She said, I want you to come up with what you believe. So that's my view of the Constitution, how I believe, and the one I would most align with in my lifetime on the Supreme Court is Justice Clarence Thomas. I think he's been a great jurist. When you read his opinions, he sticks right to the point. He sticks with the Constitution, and if you look at just his life as an American success story, I think it's a wonderful story. So that's probably my favorite judge, or at least federal judge in my lifetime. But let's talk about the General Sessions Court. Let's talk about what my vision would be if I were to be elected to General Sessions Court. There's several things I want to talk about, but the first is, and I think you hear judges, or at least judicial candidates, talk about this a lot, efficient dockets, right? We all want efficient dockets. We want criminal cases flowing in and out quickly. We want a separate juvenile docket that's flowing well. And one idea that I have that I like to put forward is I would like for there to be a special day for civil matters to be heard. Now, currently, civil matters are heard at 8:30, and then they're special set on other days. But I think if we had a civil day for civil cases, This would allow us to get more quickly through criminal cases, would allow the DA to do what they need to do. And whether this is, whatever day this is, let's say it's the fourth, Thursday of the month, whatever that is, that doesn't conflict with circuit court, I think what this would allow attorneys to do is say, okay, if I've got a landlord-tenant trial, if I've got a contract under $25,000, if I've got an extended probate hearing, this would allow me to set it on this day, to get a setting so they know when their case is going to be heard. And then you've got folks coming in, getting their cases heard, and they're not having to sit for a couple hours waiting on their trial. I think that's a good thing we can do. That will give attorneys some surety as to when their case can be heard. And then that will free up Tuesdays more for criminal cases, still having juvenile on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, whatever we need to do. So that's one idea that I have. One thing I'd like to implement more is technology in the courtroom. I know the county commission has approved funds for technology. So I want to do anything I can that makes it easier on law enforcement, attorneys, litigants, and I'm open to any kind of technology that makes the court day and process easier. And also I'll work with attorneys, whether it's the district attorney's office, the public defender's office, DCS, private attorneys, whatever helps them to help their clients, that makes the process better. I'm open to ideas on that. And if there are things that are working well now that they want to keep the way they are, I'm open to that as well, and I think we should do that. One thing that I'm going to try to bring to the court is my work ethic. And I've talked about this before, but I have a strong work ethic in my private practice, and that's derived, I believe, from my parents. And as a child, my dad was an over-the-road truck driver. At the time, he owned his own trucks. So, he's gone 5 or 6 days of the week, and the day he's home, he's working on his truck. And, it's, y'all have heard that song, 18-Wheeler by Alabama, right? That was kind of my childhood in a way. And, I would hear Mom would talk to Dad on the phone. Back then, it was pay phones, right? There was no cell phones. And then he got that bag cell phone. I don't know if y'all ever had that. We thought we were uptown with that bag cell phone. But normally it's a pay phone, and he's calling Mom, and he's up north, and he's got to chain the tires on the truck because he can't get through the Chicago snow. And even as a child, that really stuck with me. I thought, Dad's working hard for us, and he's really trying to help us get ahead. And my mom was the same way. She became an educator when I was 4 years old, and she's still an educator and school principal today. So and the way she pushed us to use education, to use education to try to make a difference. And I used to always hear her and her fellow teachers say that a mind was a terrible thing to waste. So we really tried to take our education as far as we could go and just use that to make a difference. So I get that work ethic from my parents. I put that down on my law school application, that they were a big inspiration to me, and to try to, just work hard and get out there and make a difference. So I'm going to bring that work ethic to the court if I'm elected. And, I was the student in law school. I was the nerd. I was up at 2, 3 a.m. trying to get ready for class the next day, if that's what it took to try to get ready for class. And I'll bring that same work ethic to the court. I'm available. I'm already working in Cannon County 5+ days a week. I own my own office. I'm here. I'm ready to work. I'm available if law enforcement, DCS, attorneys, whomever needs me, I'm here. Last but not least, my vision for the General Sessions Court is that the judge has to be an ambassador. And I think the ambassador is in 2 different ways. One, it's an ambassador to Cannon County for community service. And then 2, for the Murfreesboro judiciary. And I'll get to the judiciary in just a second. But the General Sessions judge has to be, you're an official, right? You're someone serving the community. So we need to be serving not just our youth, which will be served through the juvenile court, but also Cannon County has a lot of senior citizens, and we need to be serving folks at both ends of the spectrum. I've tried to do that. I've been on the board of the Senior Center. It's been a blessing to help them and try to make a difference there. But also, I was fortunate to be a co-founding board member of Cannon County CASA, which serves the juvenile court of Cannon County, and we put volunteers in these cases to try to get to know these children and then to make recommendations to the court based on what they see in the particular cases. I'm now the chair of the board of CASA, and it's just been an honor to be able to do that and use what I do every day in the law to try to help there. So you're an ambassador to the county, but also you're an ambassador in Rutherford County. We're part of the judicial district Rutherford County is a part of. So our circuit and chancery judges out of Murfreesboro are the ones who come up here and decide cases that directly affect our citizens above general sessions. So if they call and say, hey, I need the courtroom this day, or I'm coming to this event in Woodbury, what is this about? I want to be that person that says, hey, Judge so-and-so, we're honored to have you come. Woodbury thinks a lot of you, wants you to be a part. And I think that not only helps the connection between the bench and bar, but it also helps them want to come up here and be a part and better serve our citizens. And I'm talking about engaging the youth. Folks, if we don't help our youth and get them engaged, why are they ever going to want to come back, and be a part, right? If we don't make them a part of the community now. So one idea I have for that, and I've already volunteered a few attorneys to help me if there's enough interest with the students, is to possibly start a mock trial program in our high school. And I've spoken with some school officials about this who would be interested. And I think that's one area the General Sessions Judge, could utilize this room, the resources of the county, and can get attorneys involved to try to help students see if the legal career is something they want to pursue. And even if it's not something they decide they want to pursue, well, they've worked on their public speaking skills, they've worked on their critical thinking, and they participated in another team at the high school and built some rapport with their fellow students. So that's one idea that I have. And I think this would be a way to really help carry our county forward and make a difference in these students' lives. So that's just a few things that I see that the court could do. I first had an experience with General Sessions Court when I was in law school. I clerked in the General Sessions Court for a summer, and it was between my second and third year of law school and my final year there. And it was an interesting experience because I had worked for criminal defense attorneys, I had worked for district attorneys, but then I got to see what it was like for the judge on a day in and day out basis. And it's a lot, folks. It's a lot because you're hearing civil cases in the morning, you're hearing traffic cases, then you're hearing criminal cases and juvenile cases, sometimes all in the same day. And the decisions you make every day affect people's lives. So I saw right then that that's something that needs to be handled with careful study of the law, careful listening to the facts of the case, and quite frankly with prayer. You need to look at each case with prayer and try to do what's best for each case, and especially with the children, what's in the best interest of the children. That's the standard our judges are supposed to look at. So one funny story, my first day as a clerk in General Sessions, I was coming up that stairway and one of the court officers stopped me and he said, "What are you doing?" And I don't know, I guess I'm a little nervous. I said, "I don't know, what are you doing?" I thought he was going on. And he said, "No, what are you doing?" And I said, this is my job for the summer, I'm just trying to go. He said, "What are you," he said, "You're chewing something." I said, "It's gum." He said, "Well, that's a misdemeanor, right?" I'm like, "No, they didn't teach me that in law school," So that was Mr. Avra, and he became a friend after that, and I saw him not too long ago, but I think he was just messing with me, but had a good time with him that day and got to know him. And at the time, Howard Blair was an officer, and they were so good to me that summer, but he did have a little fun with me that day. But that was me in law school, but now I'm in practice, and I've been in practice for several years in Woodbury, and I would like to take the lessons I've learned, experiences I've had in private practice, and apply that to the court if given the opportunity. Early voting, as some of you know, is April the 13th through the 28th. I encourage you to get out in early vote in April, and then of course the election is May the 3rd. And this race will be decided in May 3rd. So a lot of good races in August. Don't forget to go vote in August, but this race will be decided on May the 3rd. If I could, I'd like to leave you with just a verse that's kind of become the mantra of our campaign. And this comes from the book of Zechariah, chapter 8, verse 16. And I shared this Saturday night at Sophia's, but it goes like this: "Speak truth to each other, pursue justice in your courts, render decisions that reflect truth and bring peace." And I just think that's a really good verse to have and a good motto for us as we go forward here. So that's a little bit about me and my vision for the court. I'm happy to take questions, and if there are none, I'll yield the floor.
The state has been much more conservative. I know the judges lagged a whole lot. And so we had a lot more liberal judges that were stayed in office for several years. What's your opinion of what's happened there? I'm seeing a lot more conservative judges coming in and being elected.
Yeah, and of course, a lot of that flows with the position of governor, right? So Governor Lee and then Governor Haslam before him they've started appointing more Republican conservative judges. And you're seeing that not only like the circuit court level, but of course that's starting to infiltrate the appellate level in Tennessee as well. But, I've been to the Court of Appeals several times, and I have to say, most of the judges I've been in front of are what I consider more liberal judges, and I've always gotten a fair shake in the appellate courts. And in fact, the last appellate case I had, I won, and a judge, the one who questioned me and pelted questions at me the most, I know was traditionally a Democrat, and he was very analytical and very fair to me. But you're starting to see a shift with the governor appointing more conservative judges, yeah. And kind of like, that's a question I've gotten on the trail, and I think it's a good and fair question. Is General Sessions Court a political court? And I would argue no, or at least it shouldn't be. And what I mean by that is it's not like the U.S. Supreme Court where they're deciding abortion cases, voting rights, immigration, all these hot button issues. General Sessions, for the most part, is not like that. And, I think you need to know what your judges believe and what their philosophies are, but the General Sessions judge is going to follow the law, whether it's passed by a Republican or Democrat legislature. And I think following that rule of law is a conservative principle, but it's something that I think our judges should do. So it's not really going to be decisions that I make that are necessarily political or based off political views. But I mean, a good judge, even at Supreme Court level, should set their political views aside and look at the facts of the case and apply it to the law. We all know that doesn't happen, at least at the Supreme Court level. But I will say in Tennessee, I think our judges, for the most part, do set their politics aside, and they decide cases on a case-by-case basis based on the facts. And I've seen them on both sides of the aisle do that for sure. So it's a good question.
Well, I know we've seen, I guess we've seen in the headlines in the last few months where a lot of judges have, as far as bail is concerned, let people out on very low amounts of bail, and that probably shouldn't have been turned out at all. And I know that's hard to do, but to set those bails high enough to keep them from going out and doing a repeat, becoming a repeat offender. And I know that's been a problem with liberal judges that in most cases, from what I've seen.
Yeah, and I think, in each case, the judge I know it sounds cliche, but you've literally got to take each case by case and look at the facts. And, that's a question I get on the trail as far as like probation violations. How would you handle this? How would you handle this? Well, judicial canons forbid me for saying how I would handle a certain case without it being before me if I were elected. But I think you literally do have to look at each case. And in the case of bail, I don't think you would, have a policy either way necessarily. You would just say, okay, what needs to happen here? How do I protect the constitutional rights in that specific case and make a fair decision? So, would
the bail be based on the past criminal history of that? Can you do that?
I mean, that's one thing that could weigh into it, but it's normally, and especially where you see bail decisions, and this is usually more circuit court than sessions, but you see the contentious cases about bail involving, like murder charges, rape charges, those kind of cases, and the public has concern of what's going to happen on low bail, So I think those are where the community usually gets involved and gets concerned about what could happen if the bail's too low, But again, I think the judge just has to look at each one individually. Anybody want to debate the Constitution or talk about Judge Brown Jackson that's going through confirmation hearings? I don't guess we need to get into that. I will say that looks like a very tough process to be confirmed by the Senate. I don't care which side of the aisle you're on. I know Justice Kavanaugh went through a tough process, and now Judge Brown Jackson's going through a tough process as well. So I'm not envious of them in that respect at all. But if there's no other questions, thank you all for letting me speak tonight. I really appreciate it.
I will say that I do like what CASA does. CASA. I know that a lot of cases, I know a lot of people who have had to go through that system. And DCS, and a lot of times, although they're supposed to protect the rights of the child, a lot of times they do worry a lot more about the parents' rights. And CASA is strictly the child's interest, what's best in their interest.
We got a minute for me to talk about CASA?
Sure.
Okay. So CASA, we started that in 2017 here in Cannon County, and basically it's what Tracy's saying. So we have volunteers that are appointed by the judge who go into these cases, and they're able to meet with the families, meet with the child, and then they make recommendations, to the court. And they're separate from DCS, from the guardians ad litem, from the attorneys, and they get to have a separate independent voice for the child. And I think we're like 24 volunteers now in CASA. And if any of y'all know Camille Smith, she does a fantastic job. And of course, Lacey Buchanan was our first director. She got us started. She did a great job as well. But Camille just trains these volunteers. She gets them in the courts, and they're making a difference daily in children's lives. So as a board, we get to hear some of this, but the judge will get to see this every day, what it is they're doing. And our volunteers, they're not paid. They donate their time and their talents to do this. And you've got to have a heart for children to be a part of that process and do this. And these are not easy cases. These are problem cases, or these volunteers wouldn't have to be involved. So, and they're independent, like Tracy's getting at, because I've been involved in like termination of parental rights cases as an attorney, and especially I've been appointed a lot as a guardian ad litem. And okay, you're appointed, right? You go meet the family. What do the families do? They're going to put on their best front for the attorneys, right? They're going to try to impress the attorneys, and you may not always get a good reading on what that child is going through, what needs to happen in their life. And I think that's where CASA really has a chance to make a difference, to go in and say, okay, well, let me talk to this child, let me form a bond with them, get to know them, and then maybe I can see what's really going on here. And we strive to do that as attorneys, but people put on fronts for attorneys. I mean, I see it all the time. So it's just a different, independent voice, and I think it just makes a huge difference for our courts. So CASA is wonderful, and I've been blessed to be a part of that for sure. So support CASA if you can. Yeah.
I know it's kind of off topic because you're Kansas City, but I just wanted to bring that up because
that's a good point. Yeah, it's a great program for our county.
How long has it been going on?
I think we started in 2017, and we didn't have a lot going on that first year, but I think officially started around 2017. Yeah.
And they've got how many counties now? Do you have any idea?
I don't know for sure. Almost every county surrounding us, but Warren, I think has one, and I believe Warren.
Coffee does.
Yeah, they do. Of course, Rutherford County. And I talked to someone in Warren County the other day. They're looking at creating a CASA program. So, yeah.
If somebody walks through that door right there in ragged clothes, and he's sitting on that side, and then somebody comes in a suit, and he sits on that side, is that going to make a difference?
No, it's not. No, and that's kind of the age-old question about churches, right? How do you deal with folks on opposite ends of the spectrum? No, it's not going to make a difference for me. You both have rights. Both people have rights. They have a case to be heard, and it doesn't matter if they're worth $1 or $1 million. It doesn't matter to me.
I know a few years ago they brought up over in the jail the overcrowding, and they was talking about ankle monitors and letting some of them out so it wouldn't be so overcrowded. Would that be something that they could do to help with the overcrowding over there? Or?
Well, jail crowding issues, unfortunately, are an issue in almost every county in Tennessee. I mean, that's where we get into like the bond issues, you know, if they're able to make bond and all that. But that depends on the kind of case for sure, because, you know, the jail has trustees that are, you know, I hate to use the word it is, but they built some trust and rapport with the sheriff's department. But then you've got more violent offenders. Obviously, that would never happen. Or you know, one issue that our jails are facing today, and I've talked to some officers recently about this, is mental health. How do you deal with mental health situations in the jail? And you know, what do you do when you've got someone in lockup that, you know, mentally may not have progressed past the age of 7 or 8? Well, they don't need to be in the general population, but if your jails aren't designed to fit that, then what do you do? You know, and I think that's an issue that a lot of sheriffs in the state are having to look at. You know, we want to, you know, we don't want to give somebody extra rights. We also want to be mindful that maybe there are special needs sometimes, even in the jail population, and we need to be mindful of that. And because we don't, not only do we respect them and their rights, but we don't want to create unnecessary situations of liability for counties, you know. So that's something that I think law enforcement deals with a lot too.
Oh, that's the sheriff's judgment as far as,
Well,
if you had that program, who would get out?
that's generally the sheriff's discretion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about like mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah. If there were a situation of somebody who was charged with a crime, but obviously had a mental health concern.
I volunteered over at our convenience center.
Mm-hmm.
And when, this was before the new one was built, and we had the inmates, when the inmates were up there. I learned a lot. I was over the inmates there, and I helped out. What I did is just helped out a few days when they would get in the bind, volunteered there. But the inmates, you know, I got to talk to them, got to know some of them, got to talk to them. And a lot of those people, you know, they would just be behind on child support, or it would be something that I wondered if it wouldn't be a better way of doing that than putting those people in jail. And it looks like to me that's something that needs to be looked at.
Well, and that's one issue that comes up as far as contempt hearings in court, right? Somebody's violated a court order, so do the judges throw them in jail for that? Well, if their reason for contempt is they've not paid something, it's kind of hard to make money sitting in jail, you know? So that's kind of a...
Like debtor's court.
It's kind of an age-old balance that the courts have to look at and say, well, you know, is this going to be more productive putting them in jail? Yeah. And of course, COVID has affected everything as far as like inmate service. I know at the senior center, we used to have the trustee inmates come over and set up tables and that kind of thing. And obviously they can't do that anymore because if there's an outbreak of COVID, then there's not space in general population to separate certain groups of inmates based on COVID quarantine. So COVID has just, with everything, rocked the system, obviously, you know.
It just seems like there could be a much better way of taking care of those kind of people with some kind of a work-off punishment instead of a working punishment, because that's what they were doing. You know, these were the trustees that they were letting out because they were very low risk.
I think as we get, hopefully, knock on wood, right, farther and farther away from COVID, you may see some of that again, you know, but we'll see how it goes with COVID and its variants, I guess.